guys. Okay, so React 16's been out for quite a while now, but just recently, so we've had Felix obviously supporting React 16. MYB is practice, so Shell. It's also they're looking to roll out React 16 as well. So I thought it's good to have a look through, and I thought doing a brown bag was sort of a good motivation for myself to get into React 16 and see what it has to offer. So I just want to share with you guys what I learned, and some of you guys have already been in React 16. That's great. If you've already checked it out, and if there's stuff that I've missed or there's any tips you can offer, just feel free to shout it out anytime. Cool. So we'll get into it. Okay, it's gonna work. Cool. So these are the areas that I covered: fragments, set state, portal, lifecycle changes, few new APIs, code splitting, suspense, error boundaries. I didn't cover concurrency mode because it's not out yet, and I couldn't get the unstable versions to work. And same goes for suspense for data fetching. Hooks has already been covered by Sridhar. So if you want to know more about hooks, I suggest you reach out to Sridhar for that. Okay. So the first thing is fragments. So I've got some demos, some live demos that I'll use to help illustrate some of these things. So before in React, prior to React 16, we had to. Ooh, why is that not showing up? How do we get it to show there? Duplicate mirror. Cool. Okay, cool. Nice. Okay, so if we wanted to return back to elements like this, we always had to have some sort of wrapping parent. So we couldn't just do that. So what React 16 did initially was they said, okay, you can return back an array. So something like that, and that was good. And I'll show you why later this can be useful. And then in React 16.2, they allowed us to do that, which is a nice little shortcut. Yep, I can zoom it. Sorry. Yep, cool. So one of the problems with having divs in here is, sorry. If we go over to my not very pretty app, but it serves its purpose for this demo. If we just zoom this in, so if we inspect this part here, we can see that, okay, so we've got our extra divs, just ignore the comma. We've got our extra divs here. So this can cause, not only that it kind of makes it look a bit messy if you've got lots of nested things in divs, it can also cause styling issues in some situations. So if we do that, which is the shorthand, then when we re-render it, the extra divs are gone. So we've just got that. So it's much nicer to look at, and you don't have styling issues. So the reason why, like, if we have something like this, we have an array of just, I'm just going to say an array of things, and then we want to map over that. Oops. Item star map. this way. We still need our, so yeah, I'll just do that. Cool. So we can do this. Yep. Yep, thanks. Cheers. So we got it repeated several times, but there is a problem. So it's saying that we need a unique key for each one. We can't assign keys to this, so we can't go. We can't do that. So what we can do is they introduced a new class called a fragment, and we can use that instead. And we can set that to key. So now the error's gone, and we still don't have our we don't have any extra divs. We have this container div, but let me see. Yeah, so we don't have any extra divs in between here. We've just got our elements. And also we're just returning back a straight array, which in React 15, you would have to wrap this again in a div if you were returning back an array, a div or something else, if you were going to return back an array. But in React 16, we don't need to do that, which is great. Cool. Back. And yeah, again, down here, you see I've been under React 15, I'd be forced to use divs here because I've got an element here and I've got other elements here and they need some sort of a parent. So, but under React 16, I don't need that anymore. Cool. So fragment, I think for me personally, I like the empty tags. It's just shorter than importing a fragment class and then having to type fragment and use it. You can just use the shortcut. But if you want to use it in some sort of where you need a key, you have to use the fragment. You don't have an option on that.
Are they syntactically the same if you're not using keys?
Yeah, then they're the same. If you're not using keys, they're exactly the same. Yeah. Cool. So that's fragments. It requires Babel greater than 7, greater than or equal. So Babel 7 or higher if you want to use fragments. Okay, if we move along to so set state. So I don't have a coding demo for this. I've just got a little bit of code here. So this is just a small improvement. I'm going to get rid of that. So traditionally, if you wanted to have conditional set state, you would wrap in a condition like this. So we're just checking if the count is greater than, is less than max count, and if it is, then we're incrementing the state. Otherwise, we do nothing. What we can instead, we can turn back just null, and what that means is that when we, unfortunately, you can't see. How do I hide that guy? Maybe if I. Hasn't worked. Okay, let's not touch it. You can see down here, we're just doing itinerary and we're just checking max count, and we're returning back an object which will represent the state. Otherwise, returning back null, and then we can just use it straight like this. So set state will call this function, passing in state, and we'll do a bit of a check and return back null. And that will, if it gets back null, it means that it won't cause a re-render. It will just do nothing. So that's, and it just means that this is makes state more functional. And this is obviously easy to test, and it's reusable than doing something like this. Portals. So a portal is a way to render elements directly into other nodes, and it can be used to create modals and tooltips. But it doesn't create a modal out of the box. You still have to have some CSS to do that. So let's have a look at that. So I already had a modal set up for this demo. Yep. So you can see here I've got this this preview modal, and it uses this React API called Create Portal. And all it's going to do is just render an image and an audio player into the body node. If you have a look here in our template, so we've got body, and then we've got our root and some other stuff. But so we're going to render it into the body here. So we go back to here. So that's what that'll do. It'll render all of the stuff into there. It's got a bit of styling to make it a modal, so I'm just using styled components for this. So we've got styling to fix position. We've got Z order is 1, so that it's above everything else, and margin auto, so it's centered, and then we've got another centering style here to center the content of the modal. Okay, so if we just type in something here. So it's using Spotify API. If we click here, we get some stuff. So if we just collapse that up, and hopefully you can see it, I'll just make it a bit bigger. If we click on something like this, we will get our modal. And you can see here that a new div has appeared. So I just do that again. We do it again. There you go. There's our new div rendered in our body, and that's just basically just a modal, so we can't click due to the styling. And another thing we can do is if we've got this footer tag here. So if we wanted to render into that particular tag, I've got a style layout here, so footer, and again it's using Create Portal, and it'll render any children that we give it into the footer tag. So we're just using this selector to select the footer tag, and it's gonna comment some stuff out. So we're gonna swap this for so what this will do is we're going to our page footer, which will create a portal, and it'll render this audio player into that footer tag. So if we do that again, and you can see here the footer tag here, it's empty, so it's got no children. We do that, and we click. There we go, and we've got our audio player there, and there's the audio player in the footer tag, like that. So that's what you can use portals for.
What would you use Create Portal as opposed to React?
If you, yeah, they are. So sorry, when would you use Create Portal instead of render? So actually, I'm not sure. That's a good question. Usually, like renders normally just used to used at the at the beginning when to render the initial app. But yeah, I think in theory you probably could use it in the middle of JSX to render something into a place. But they've created the Create Portal API for the purpose of rendering into particular DOM nodes. But yeah, as you pointed out, you can probably do that with render, but I've never tried that. But yeah, it's something to take note of, I think. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, maybe we could try it. So what does that do? Yeah, works exactly the same. Yeah, okay, cool. That's something. I have to look into that a bit more. Cool. Okay. Let's move along. Okay, so these are the new context APIs. New context API here, which just replaces the old one. And it's a little bit, I guess, easier to use. So I've set up a context already. So here we go. Oh, it's not sharing. So basically, we just call create context, and we get a context, and then we get a provider and a consumer from that. And how we can use it is we simply import our provider. I think it kind of reminds me of Redux a little bit. Provider from. How did I put that at the root? No, I didn't. Component. Oops. And then we can wrap it in our provider. Value equals, I would just say some something like that will do. And we've got a comma in the wrong place. Cool. And then if we want to use it, again, we just import consumer from context. Yep. And yeah, we can just put it here. Consumer. This uses render props. Value. There we go. You're complaining about. Oh, yeah, okay, sure. So you can see why this is useful. So there we go. And so basically, so we can use context API as like a way to pass data through globally. And although it's kind of recommended only do this as a last resort, it's better to look at other ways. So if you're passing data through lots of lots of children stuff, it's maybe you better look at different composition techniques, or maybe somehow collapsing that those layers, making them smaller. But as a last resort, you could use a context API to do that. Yeah. Okay. Next one is the create ref. So again, this is just a replacement for references. So we've got our create ref API, and there's no one there for the ref. So with the create ref, I'm going to demonstrate that one. Okay, I'll do it here. So it's pretty easy to use. So we just create a reference, and I'll call it, that's not even const, start, input ref equals react dot create ref, and that's it. And then you can just assign it. Input ref, and then if you wanted to use it, it's just this dot input ref dot current points to the so current points to the node that has the ref, and then you can call any sort of methods on that. So I've just hooked this up. So we've got the on click. So when you click the button, it'll call this event and then set focus to input. I can't demonstrate this because this is not actually available in the app, but this is how you would do it if you were to code it. Again, same thing for child components. So if you handle a ref, so the start child ref, we'll call it, equals react dot create a ref. And then you could go equals the start child ref, and then you could access methods on it, such as like this, for example. You could just call start child ref dot current dot something like that. But what if you wanted to actually set a ref here? You actually you don't want a reference of child component, you want a reference of input. You can't pass ref as a prop. So they have a thing called forward refs, which I'm not sure if I can remember how to do it, but let's give it a try. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so to create a forward ref, we have to return. And it goes react dot forward ref, and this will return you back props. Yeah, props and a ref, and it's just a function. To return this way. Don't need to return then. So now you've got props, and you can just, so those are the props that are passed to this guy, and you can spread them if you want, and then you can pass refs as a prop to input if you wanted, if it was like a React component. But because this is just an HTML element, we can just go ref equals ref, something like that. And then what that will mean is that this will now point to that input. Does that make sense? So we're passing a ref into that, which is actually pointing to the input here. And you can use this forward ref to do that if you wanted to. yeah, so that's pretty much forward refs. Somewhere it's useful is in higher order components where you've got, I just sort of roughly do this. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can. If you had like a higher order component and that was, you had like a child class in there and you wanted to return that back. So the higher order component would return back the child, but you actually wanted to set a reference to the inner component. In that case, you could use forward ref to forward that through. I can't quite remember the syntax, but yeah, but you could use it for that. So yeah, higher order components would be a use case for forward refs. Cool. That's forward refs. Okay, so we'll move on. Okay. So sorry.
Forward ref was introduced in the React system.
Yeah.
So create ref was already there.
Was it in 15?
I'm just asking.
No. So create ref was introduced in React 16. And they also introduced forward ref as well. I think there was a way to do it in 15, but it was quite cumbersome. So they've basically just tidied up the API. Yeah. Lifestyle changes, lifecycle changes. So component did mount, will mount is deprecated. These are all deprecated. Again, this one, anything you do in here, you can now just do in the constructor. There's a new static method called get derived state from props, which will replace receive props. And so it basically works the same way, but it's static. It means that it's global on the class, basically. So it's like think of C# static methods. It's the same thing. It's on the prototype rather than on the class.
It's not on the prototype. It's going to be on the function itself.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. On the function, yeah. So yeah, that's basically what it means. And again, in this case, you actually return the new state. So if we, how do I have the options to share anymore? Flip. Wow. Okay, let's go this way. So in the case of that, what we can do is so derived state from props. Prior state. So you'd simply just return back a new state. So if you had like count next props dot count. Rather than previously with the receives will receive props, you would do like a set state, and then you would use like next props again. So now you're not doing that. You're just returning back the new state. And there's this cool little thing here. Is it not letting me click on it for some reason? Okay, never mind. Start this way. So this diagram shows us when the different lifecycle methods will be called. So you can see here that get derived state from props will be called straight after construction. So we can use it to initialize state from props rather than doing that in the constructor. And it's also called when the props change on set state and if you do a forced update. So it's quite useful. You do have to initialize state with something, otherwise you'll get prior state here as undefined if we don't initialize it. So you can go state equals that, and then so when the component first after the constructor is called, you get prior state, and then you could then use whatever's in there. Otherwise, you'll get null. So yeah, okay, cool. Right, this one here, this is like a very rarely used one. I think this one is also quite rare. This one happens just before.
Modify as well. Didn't you say it has to be static?
Sorry?
Didn't you say it has to be static?
Yeah, it has to be static, yeah. Yeah, I didn't make it static. It has to be static though. So you can just go static. Yeah, good observation. So get snapshot for update is called just before it renders, and you can get some more information about the state of the DOM, and then you can return something from it, and then it'll be available in this component update, and then you can make changes for the next render. And the only example I could find was of using this was like if you wanted to control the scroll bar and stuff like that. But that's something you can use. Yeah, something new. Cool. Move on to the next one. Okay, code splitting. So code splitting is actually a bundler thing, but React have added support for components. So what code splitting does is allows you to reduce it enables you to reduce the initial bundle size by allowing the browser to download bits of code on demand, so as they need it. And let's demonstrate that. So I couldn't think of a good way to demonstrate it, so I've just done something else. So if we import, let's just get rid of some of this stuff first. Get rid of that. Okay. Just for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to import a random thing here. No, you can't. Right. Okay. Let me just kill this off. There you go. Okay. So yeah, custom hooks / use now. So all this hook is doing is it returns back, it uses moment and returns back the current time. So I'm just going to use this just for the demo. So I'm just going to use it here. So damn it, there up here. Just get rid of that. Replace that with now. Okay, so we go back to our app. Okay. Let's get rid of the stuff. rid of our I've broken something here. Yes. Okay. Nope, still not happy about it.
It was an unsaved component.
No, it should all be saved. Yeah, I think I'm just I've done something wrong somewhere. Just yep, because that is not exported by default. Yeah, okay. So I've just got the time here. I'm just using this just purely for this demo because I couldn't think of a better third-party component to import. So I've just used moment. So we've got the time, and if we look at the network tab and we go JS, so you can see here that we've got one bundle and it's like 3.4 megabytes there, which is quite large. So let's imagine that moment is a really big package that we don't want to import. So we can import it dynamically, like this. So there's a couple of ways to do it. I'm going to do it this way. I think. Right. So what this means is that because moment is not a name type, so it's like export as default. We import default and then we rename it to moment. That's just what this syntax is doing. We're going to wait and then we're going to use it. So if we refresh, so you can see here that the size is reduced and we've now got two separate chunks. And now this pattern is set up by here, so we can use this pattern chunk file name. We can specify the name and .js. So if we call this .bundle, and we'll have to restart the compiler because I've changed the config. There we go, got .bundle. But here it says 0 and 1, which is again isn't very friendly. Based on the bundler, so Webpack has a thing called magic comments, which we can use to set names and do other things. So I'm just going to use it now to set the name. So we basically just chuck in a comment here and call it Webpack chunk name and moment. And then there we go. So now you see the two bundles, vendor and moment. There are other directives that you can use. So we've got prefetch and preload. So if you specify the prefetch, then the chunk will be downloaded when the browser's idle. If it's preload, it'll download in parallel. Cool. Okay. If you don't specify anything, then it'll just download it when it needs it. Okay. So either you can do it this way, or you can just go treat this as just a regular. Just use promise syntax. Yep. We don't need that. And that'll work just the same. Okay. So that's basically dynamic importing, which you can use to do code splitting. So if we want to do this for React components, I'm not really sure why I'm bothering with this, but anyway. Okay. So let's just get rid of that for now. So let's say we wanted to dynamically import this artist component because, again, it's really big and it only shows up when... yeah, of course I have. Moment. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay, there we go. And there's one other thing I've done wrong. Yeah, here. Cool. So artist is the component that drives this one here. So this is the artist component. So they may not be searching. They may only be interested in the top albums, for example. So we don't want to download it straight away. So what we can do is React have so we can't use the dynamic import API because a function because we have to wait, and we can't wait in the render here. So they introduced a thing called lazy and suspense. And what we can do is we can import artist, equals lazy, and that takes a function. And then we can use our dynamic import. And we can simply copy that into there. And we don't need that anymore. Suspense. So we have to give it a fallback as well. Hopefully that will work. So if we look at our network tab here, when we click, there we go. We've got our bundle, which is the artist component, and we've reduced the file size slightly. And if we refresh that, and if we slow it down, hang on, let me just see here. It's really slow. You can see loading component, so that's the fallback, and then just loading data, that's just something else added in, and then we'll get the component in a bit. There we go. So that's basically code splitting in React using this suspense, lazy and suspense to do that. There is a library called Loadable because on fast network connections, you might have a spinner, but on the fast connection, you don't want to see a flash of the spinner. But you want the spinner to show up when on slow connection. So you can use Loadable. Loadable is a package that lets you specify a delay, how long the delay is before the fallback will render. Going forward in React 16, when concurrency becomes available, they will have that feature that lets you basically set a delay on the suspense component to delay, to specify how long to delay before the spinner shows. So that's something there. There's an interesting article here of code splitting versus bundle splitting. So I think this is quite a good read. This guy thinks actually bundle splitting is better. So bundle splitting is where you chunk the bundle initially rather than split it based on different components. So that's a good read. Okay, so the final thing is error boundaries. So error boundaries, I think everyone was talking about them when React 16 first came out. So it's pretty well known, but I'll go through it anyway. So any component can become an error boundary as long as it's got either this get derived state from error or component to catch, or both of them. So I've set up a error boundary already. So it's just a regular component. And again, I've just put these two methods in there. So the first one, get derived state from error, is basically we just return a new state when the error occurs. And did catch is just a way to do some logging or notify other components that an error occurred. And in the render method, we can make a decision that if an error occurred, we're going to render some sort of fallback. Otherwise, we're going to render the children. So where we can use it is we can use it only for errors that happen inside lifecycle methods or inside render. We can't use it inside custom events or async methods. It's useful for hooks and for code splitting. So to demonstrate an error boundary, we're going to do that. Okay, so let's just take off. Oh, we'll leave that. We'll leave that there. So let's say our top five component is pulling data from API, and the API, they change something in the API, and now the package doesn't. The response of the API is not in the format that this guy is expecting, and we haven't handled that. So I've just got mock data. I'm just gonna change this a little bit and to simulate something that could happen. So instead of returning back an array, let's say they decide to return back an object with data as an array. And yep, comma in there. Okay, sure, it's run the wrong way. Yep. So we do that, and then the whole application just falls over. And I've got it on, so I've throttled it. So let's just like do that. There we go. Okay, re-render. Ooh, what? Sorry, guys. There we go. That one. Okay. There we go. Okay, so the whole application falls over, which is not good. And it's telling us, hey, you should be using error boundaries. So what we can do is in our home, we can import our error boundary. So import I've just called it error handler from error handler / error handler. And we can just wrap this guy in error handler like that. So we've got our fallback here, but at least our application is still working like that, even though this has exploded. We still get the console error, but that's fine. From the user's point of view, they can still use the app mostly. What if we had an error in our code splitting? So we couldn't download the bundle, for example. So again, we can just simply wrap this in our error handler. Like that. And I better fix that up. Undo.
So error handler is a type that you define that has component catch or something.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, so it's just a regular component.
Okay.
And the only thing that makes it an error boundary is these two components. Really this, no, you can have either one, but if you want to have some sort of fallback, then you can have this one and you can set some sort of state. Otherwise, you can have some sort of event, and then maybe the containing component can say, hey, an error was thrown, I'm going to handle that myself somehow. So either one or both. So we've just wrapped this in the error handler here. And if we just refresh, of course, it still works as normal. There we go. But what happens if, for some reason, it couldn't download the bundle? So if we go to network tab and we just go offline, then we get the fallback. So if there was an error downloading the bundle. So that's pretty much it for error boundaries. Yeah, that's it. There's some references here on all the stuff that I looked at. If you guys are interested, I can post the slides. Yeah, that's it. Cool. Any questions? No?
When is this coming out?
Oh, this is all now. So.
In Shell, sorry.
Oh, in Shell. I'm not sure. I think they're aiming for sometime after the Felix stuff. I think soon after, I imagine. Felix, they wanted to have it out by 12th of June. So I guess sometime in June. I think probably the upgrade for Felix, the upgrade to React 16, I imagine, will be bigger than Felix. So probably take a while for teams for crews to get their code. Yeah. 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 I think like if you're using special stuff like the will receive props and stuff like that, just change them. It's not that hard. You'll just get some deprecation warnings. It'll still work. It should, like, Facebook tested it against their, I think they got something like 16,000 components, and they only had very minor issues. So it shouldn't be that big a problem. And yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, we set state directly without using set state. It's all
Yeah. Yeah.
Kerry, in your section on the code splits, when you ripped up, when you use import inside the lazy,
Yeah.
what does this import? Like, it's import going to be a functions that is provided by React now?
No, so import is it's something that Webpack will look for. So it's a dynamic import.
Yes, but nowadays it takes a different signature.
Different signature.
Well, I mean, just when you define it at the top of the file, it's
Ah,
interactive, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
Okay,
you
okay, okay.
specify- Whereas now I think it's a function. So if you click on definition, it would go just.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. So they're actually so React have this lazy function,
Yes.
and then that takes a function which then takes the dynamic import function.
Can you click on import? What is it actually? Because it's not the import that comes from the language. So this import
Yeah,
comes from, but this one is not. This is like a function.
yeah, yeah. This one, I believe this is yeah. I can't click into it, but it's not part of the React.
It's not like-
No, no. This is oh, is it a JavaScript thing or a bundler thing?
I
Yeah.
mentioned this bubble
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Because the API import is going to be it's part of the language specification.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah,
this
yeah.
one is,
This one is not. Yeah, 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 yeah. But you'd only use this like you'd only use it with lazy when you're dealing with React components. If you're dealing with something that's not a React component, such as Moment, then you can just do dynamic import directly. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, because back in the day we used to require.
Yeah.
And they require just it does dynamic loading and just up the top specify which modules and it will just get them before.
Yeah.
So it's very similar. We're getting to this.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, cool. All right. Thanks, guys.